evening, my followers of fear, and welcome to October. Yeah, we're in the middle of spooky month, and I'm a bit behind on my reading. So I thought it would be a good idea to catch up now. And why not with Hannah already out? Might as well give you something to whet your appetite with. Tonight's story is the fifth story in the collection, The Red Burst. It's the most abstract of the stories in the collection, but also one about faith being tested in hard times. Shall we begin? Yes, we shall. Okay, it says to turn left in a quarter mile, said Joel Gladstein, looking up from his smartphone. He was 30, with tan and skin and bleached hair styled into stylish spikes. In the driver's seat, his husband, David Falkist, a tall man with dark hair and a chin beard that ran along his jaw from one ear to another, put on his turn signal and switched to the left turn lane. He had no trouble doing so, this far out in the boonies. Busy traffic wasn't exactly a problem. As the car turned, David shivered. He hated country roads with their wide open spaces and lack of life. Even surrounded by woods on either side of the road, he felt exposed. He was used to New York City with its busy streets, cloud-puncturing buildings, and endless seas of people. There he felt at peace, part of something big and exciting, and ever-growing and changing. What his sister Terry saw in living out in the middle of Minnesota, where you had to drive 3 hours to see a movie or find a bar with good music, he had no idea. How much further till we get there? Asked David, keeping his eyes on the woods. Even in the middle of the day, these thick woods that let no sunlight through looked like the setting of a cabin in the woods horror film, with him and Joel as the throwaway victims of the undead serial killer or evil spirits. The app says it's about 20 miles to Wolfgrass, Joel answered. About 20 miles till we find out what happened to Terry. Glancing skyward, David set up a prayer. Lord God, ruler of the universe, please let Terry be all right. He didn't add that he hoped Terry hadn't done something to ruin her happiness, but he was sure HaKodesh Baruch Hu knew that part already. Terry's happiness was a major part of the Falkist family's prayers. Esther and David Falkist had been raised to love their heritage and religion, and David, the younger child, had taken to it like a fish in water, and now taught Jewish studies at Columbia University, as well as attended synagogue nearly every Saturday. He'd also married Joel, a massage therapist from Ohio who had spent 6 years growing up in Israel and was an active member in their synagogue. Esther Terry Falkist, on the other hand, had not bonded to her heritage. After her bat mitzvah, she declared all religion a crock of shit. It stopped following their laws and traditions and rebelled in every way imaginable. At 17, she ran away from home with her wannabe rapper boyfriend. At 19, she turned up in a mental hospital in Massachusetts with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. It took another 6 years of therapy and medication, but eventually Terry was able to even out, as she put it, and repair her relationship with her family. The bad news was that, for the sake of her health, both Terry and her doctors believed some separation from her family and the familiar settings of New York might be better for her. Thus, Terry had moved out west to Minnesota. There she had started as a clerk at a supermarket in the isolated town of Wolfgrass, and had worked her way up to general manager. So Falkist, it seemed that Terry had finally found what she was looking for. Of course, as the Jewish parents are wont to do, Abe and Bertie, he thought that daughter could do much better than a just general manager at some no-name supermarket in the middle of nowhere, but they were happy she was happy. Sure, she He still wasn't religious or making full use of her potential, but at least she'd found the life she'd always wanted. And at least she kept in touch. Every week, she'd email her family with updates of her life and sent photos of Wolfgrass, which David thought was a pretty little town. But then, 2 weeks ago, Terry stopped emailing or picking up her phone, and the worry started to seep in. So, you've never actually been to this place? Joel asked. Nope, Dave replied with a sigh. Terry always said it was a bad idea. She said people in Wolfgrass, for all their Midwestern hospitality, were a little backwards when it came to gay rights, so it'd be better for me to stay away. You sound like you don't believe that. Well, she kept mom and dad away too, said David. Maybe she was afraid of people judging her because of her family. Or maybe her family judging her, Joel asked. David said again, yeah, that too. Well, maybe she's just been busy and forgot to email, Joel reminded him optimistically. Then we can just laugh about this whole thing and go to one of those little diners that all small towns seem to have. Outwardly, David made agreeing noises, but inwardly he wasn't so sure. If Terry was off her meds, then they could expect lots of anger and a flood of tears before they called the ambulance to take her to the nearest mental institution. And if she had just gotten busy, how would she react to her family coming to the one place she had full control of her life? He was so distant from his sister, he had no idea how that might go. After a while, the trees started to thin a bit, and Joel reported that the town should be coming up ahead. The road curved to the right, and David spun the wheel. Well, a town out of a postcard came into view, with cute little houses behind picket fences, and even a church or two with steeples rising to point to the sky. Flowers bloomed in nearly every yard, and trees full of foliage locked in the avenues. In the distance on a hill, he thought he saw a school in the traditional red brick of yesteryear, a statue that might have been in the town founder's end. David slammed his foot on the brake. The idyllic town that Terry had gushed about in her emails and posted beautiful photos of all for her social media accounts looked like a marauding horde had been through it. Houses stood vandalized or gutted by fires. Cars had broken and bent and crashed. And broken glass and pieces of fencing were scattered across the lawns and sidewalks. From far away, trails of smoke rose towards the sky, and God above! Were those bodies in the street? Joel? David's voice came out shaky and weak. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Beside him, he heard an audible gulp. David, what the hell happened here? He wanted to go back. He wanted to turn around and drive the hell back to the nearest town and call the police, or perhaps the National Guard. His hand even fell on the gear shift to put the car in reverse. Instead, he put it into park and got out. Come on, he said. Maybe one of them is still alive. Joel hesitated, sitting in his seat and gripping the sides, his eyes wide and his mouth thinned with terror. David turned, saw Joel wasn't coming, and gestured for him to follow. Only when he saw his husband was going to leave him in the car, however, did he get out and follow. Despite David's earlier proclamation, all the bodies they came across were dead. No pulse, no breath, no movement. And as terrifying as that was, what really got David was how they had been killed. Like they'd torn at each other with their bare hands. Most of the bodies lay close to one another or in pairs or small groups, and each one was scratched and bruised and bloodied, especially around the hands and fingers. But the weirdest part, weirder than their wounds, or even that there were so many corpses lying around, were the eyes. On most of the bodies, the skin around the eyes looked like it had been burned, all red and rough and crackly. On others, the eyes were pale and milky, or bloodshot, or were even cut out. David had never seen anything like it. After what must have been the 100th body, David stopped. He felt sick, and they found any living people yet. Joel had already thrown up twice. The air smelled of smoke and decay, and it was so silent. It felt unnatural. There wasn't even the sound of flies buzzing over corpses. In a place like this, there should have been clouds of them. Dave? Joel was leaning against the balcony of a veranda porch, pale and sweaty. He turned desperate eyes towards David. Let's get out of here. Something's happened. Maybe an outbreak. We have to call someone. The police, or the CDC, or the army. David wanted to leave too. This town looked like the plague of the death of the firstborn from the Bible had become violent and indiscriminately killing everyone in sight in the bloodiest ways imaginable. There was no way anyone could still be alive. But Terry was out there somewhere. She might still be alive. She might be hiding somewhere, or scared but hopeful someone might come to her rescue and get her out of town before or something even worse happened. He opened his mouth to say all this when a shadow fell over them. To find out what happens, followers of fear, you can pick up Hannah from all major retailers: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Apple Books, even a few international sites. And if you end up reading it, I hope you'll leave a review. Let me know what you think. Let other readers know what you think. That's all for now, my followers of fear. Until next time, good night and pleasant nightmares.